host our final engine room pit stop of the year. Can you believe we've already made it so far? It's been an incredible journey, and I'm so glad you're a part of this important moment. For those new to the engine room, let me tell you what it is. The engine room is a digital platform led by young changemakers, reimagining how the United Nations thinks, plans, and acts for our future. Before diving into today's agenda, let's reflect on this year. From the United Nations Summit of the Future to the G20 Summit in Brazil, we've witnessed landmark steps towards a new era in global diplomacy, one driven by youth representation, equity, and sustainability. The G20, representing 85% of the global GDP, 75% of the international trade, and two-thirds of the world's population, is central to this transformation. What has also been historic is the leadership shift to the global south. After Indonesia, India, and Brazil, South Africa will take over the presidency in 2025, marking the first African nation to host. 4 consecutive years of leadership from the global south present a unique chance to amplify underrepresented voices and drive policies rooted in justice, equity, and sustainable development. The timing couldn't have been more crucial. Think about it. We have the pact for the future showing us where to go, and the G20's economic influence to help us get there. As I see it, we stand at the cusp of a transformation as we approach the 2030 SDGs deadline. Over the next 90 minutes, you'll hear from G20 experts, young changemakers, and friends of global giving, the engine room of the future and the Unlock the Future coalition. Together, we will discuss how the G20 can better address the unique needs of young countries. We'll focus on healthcare, sustainable development, and debt justice. To kick things off, in our first segment, From India to the World, Shaping the Language of Tomorrow, Dr. Arunabha Ghosh and the Next Generation India Fellow Awais Ahmed will launch India in the Future Tense, a dictionary designed by Young India for when the country turns 100 years old in 2047. Next, we'll transition to our highly anticipated intergenerational power panel. This is where globally recognized leaders will take center stage to discuss South Africa's G20 priorities and their alignment with the Pact for the Future. Topics like debt justice, sustainable finance, health, and climate resilience will be front and center. Afterwards, we are turning the mic over to you in our Q&A session. Before wrapping up with one of my favorite projects this year, a thought-provoking piece by a young boy named Rasul, reflecting on the future of global cooperation. I cannot wait for you to see it. With that, let's begin. I'm excited for our very first segment. As we look to planning for the future, India in the Future Tense offers a unique attempt to map out a world where tomorrow's breakthroughs shape today's vocabulary. This dictionary is more than just a collection of words. It's a reflection for the future we are building together. To officially launch India in the Future Tense dictionary and guide us through this vision of tomorrow, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Arunabha Ghosh and Awais Ahmed. Dr. Arunabha Ghosh is an internationally recognized public policy expert, author, columnist, and an institutional builder. He's the founder CEO of the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, and he's led CEW to the top ranks as one of Asia's leading policy research institutions and among the world's 20 best climate think tanks. He's also the visionary co-leading us, the Next Generation India Fellows, alongside Elizabeth Cousins, the president and CEO of the UN Foundation. Joining him is an amazing young leader and a dear friend. In addition to being the Next Generation India Fellow for Innovation, Awais is the founder and CEO of Pixel, a groundbreaking space technology company creating the world's highest resolution hyperspectral imaging satellites. Recognized by Forbes 30 Under 30 and Fortune 40 Under 40, Awais has raised over $71 million to launch innovative satellites that monitor planetary health, making him a leading voice in the future of commercial space technology. Before Arunabha and Awais take the stage, I'm excited to share a special video that captures India's bold vision for the future. Let's watch.
We can't imagine living on a dead planet, and it's impossible to dream about a future that is not healthy, that is not peaceful, and that is not equal.
2024 is India's moment. More than half of India's population is under 30. We are the most populous country in the world and will stay that way until 2100, when we'll still be home to 14% of the global population. With that many young changemakers working now for the future, India is poised to lead the world in solving its biggest current and future challenges.
So if I think about India in 2047, my vision is one where we are chasing well-being along with economic growth, where we are using our natural resources to meet the needs of everyone and not the greed of a few, and everyone is taken along, where there's zero hunger and zero malnutrition, where farming is a viable and dignified livelihood option, where our soils are healthy and fertile, our water is conserved and rejuvenated, and there's thriving biodiversity on our farms, and at the same time, there are good welfare conditions for all animal species.
India in the future tense. With this dictionary of the future, we are mapping out a world where tomorrow's breakthroughs are today's vocabulary. Every word in the dictionary mirrors the values shaping our nation's future: inclusivity, sustainability, and embracing tech to move us forward. As we launch this dictionary today, we ask for only one thing in return. We ask that you believe in the power of your voice, believe in the power of collective action, believe that in the face of challenges, you can make a difference. India's young people aren't just the future, we are the present. The dictionary kicks off a journey, one that's taking us across the nation to build a first ever youth mandate, all leading to a game-changing report called Our Future India, dropping in 2025. This is Young India, and we are ready to lead.
Amazing. What more needs to be said? Aves, the floor is yours to take us into this exciting segment.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prachi. Great to see you all here, folks. Welcome. Welcome to this launch. It's obviously a pleasure to be here and to be launching this dictionary. I mean, if you had told me as a kid that you would get to make up words and create the future with that, I would have sort of laughed. But sort of here we are, and that will lead to a lot of things coming, right? So the Next Generation India Fellows, we've been working on this project since May of this year. So it's definitely very close to our hearts. Most dictionaries tell you what words generally mean, right? But this one will tell you what words will mean. Instead of the world influencing different phenomena and that leading to words in a dictionary, here we can use the power of words to actually sculpt our future, to will a better one into being. As J.K. Rowling has said, words are, in my not so humble opinion, our most inexhaustible source of magic, capable of inflicting both injury and remedying it. So it is our hope that these words are a small step in a million-step journey towards a truly magical world that we can create for our and the next generations to come. So that said, I'm delighted to invite Dr. Arunabha Ghosh to formally launch India in future tense. Take it away, Arunabha, over to you.
Thank you, Wes, and thank you, Prachi, for that introduction and outlining what all the fellows have been doing. And of course, I'm looking forward to the discussion with Wes in a few minutes. But as I was reflecting over just the last few months when the fellows have been working on this, what struck me was something that I mentioned during the town hall that we organized in August this year, that we should be building bridges. We should be building bridges between communities, cultures, genders, geographies, but most importantly, we should be building bridges between the past and the present and the future. A few days ago, I was watching a movie about Winston Churchill and him trying to lead the United Kingdom during the Second World War. The last scene of that film, when he wins the approval of Parliament, there's one of his political opponents says he mobilized the English language and sent it into battle. Now, I would like to believe that the youngest country on the planet right now, i.e. India, should mobilize language, whether English or otherwise, and send it into peace. and peace widely defined and broadly defined, just send it into a future that we would like to shape, a future that we would like to find aspirational, a future that finds growth, both economic, but also growth that is regenerative of our natural ecosystems. A future that increases rather than diminishes or creates hurdles for people and their capabilities. That really is the broader definition of sustainable development, of peace, of a future that we want to build. A Nobel laureate, a Nobel physicist called Niels Bohr had said that prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. I would say that the only way to predict the future is to shape it. And that's what excites me about this dictionary. And the 47 words in there for India in future tense about an India that we'd like to build by 2047 when we turn into a 100-year-old independent country. There's hope in there, there's aspiration in there. There's, most importantly, fantasy in there. And I think the journey between 2024 and 2047 is to convert fantasy into the fantastic. So congratulations to all the fellows who worked on this. Thank you for inspiring us. And with those words, I formally launch the Dictionary of the Future. Awais, over to you.
Awesome. I think there should have been a few fireworks going on there in the background. Imagine those like the words in the dictionary. Thank you, Arunabha, for that. Right. So I think it's very surreal. We just sat down with folks that want to shape a better future and came up with a few words that we hope will guide our way there. But I think the important thing is that it's not just 11 India fellows that ended up providing words into the dictionary. It also hopefully reflects the voices of a lot of youth in the country. Right, what began with individual recommendations from just the fellows has evolved through ongoing consultations from town hall breakout sessions that we have conducted with youth working on various different issues to one-on-one interviews to just informal hangouts. The result is a roadmap. Hopefully, like you said, the words will light a way to the future. But here's a key question for you, and given your experience at CEW and given your experience on so many other things, with the dictionary we have shaped a vision, but from a vision you have to actually convert it into action, right? So how do you see, what are the strategies? And you touched upon a few of those, but what would be your roadmap or strategy recommendations to us to say how we can turn this vision into action?
I think the most important thing about any vision is to have a sense of what the end point is. What is the desired state? And what is that status quo that is different from the current status quo? And then we work backwards. At CEW, we use something, our theory of change, we call it the arc of learning. And it starts with identifying the problem, not in terms of what we think is the problem, but in terms of whose problem we are trying to solve. And unless we see the problem from their perspective, it could be a farmer, it could be a farm laborer, it could be a construction worker in the city, or it could be a space entrepreneur. Whose problem are we trying to solve? Then how do we conceptualize a roadmap towards understanding their problem better, collect the evidence, the data, analyze it. But a lot about change making is actually convening and conversations, which is what these engine room pit stops are all about. I would want that the dictionary serves as a start of a conversation through multiple convenings so that people then invest their own ideas, their own interpretations of the 47 words you have in there. Finally, I would say that we cannot move from a vision to the action and from action to the outcome without the discipline of two kinds. The discipline of being time bound, but also the discipline of being collaborative. Most people, if they ask them, are you collaborative or not, will say, of course we are collaborative. But I think there's a more instrumental logic to collaboration. Collaboration comes from the words co-labor. You cannot get to the certain distance that you wish to travel without collaborating. Because singularly, how far you go is going to be lesser than how far you can go together. And this is something that has to be in the design of the change-making process, not an accident, not a feel-good exercise. Who are you going to partner with? Who doesn't understand your language? Who doesn't understand your idiom? How do we explain ourselves to them? How do we understand them better? Those have to be the frameworks, whether we are trying to bring about change in finance or in entrepreneurship or in technology or in gender discrimination. Look for people who are different from you and then build the collaborative platforms.
Lovely, lovely. I think the path is long. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges, but the opportunities are many as well. And with the things that you mentioned, and hopefully these words guiding us, the youth can get us there, along with everyone else as well. So thanks for that, Arunabh. I think as we were creating these words and discussing these words, obviously, our imagination ran away with it. And I have a few favorites. Obviously, you might see a couple of space words in there: multiplanetary civilization. As humans get out there, space diplomacy, as space ends up becoming a more critical geopolitical issue around the globe. But that said, what were some words that maybe resonated with you in the dictionary?
Well, I'd love to hear more from you about multiplanetary civilization. It excites me very much. But that being said, one of the things that jumped out to me was carbon handprint. I think it's brilliant. And those who obviously haven't seen the dictionary yet, it's the opposite of carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is the negative imprint we are having as humans on our planet. But carbon handprint is the positive influence we could have, positive imprint we could have with our own actions, with our collaborative actions, with the technologies we develop, the businesses we develop. I think it's a brilliant concept. And we would love to have not just, these ideas around, labeling where here's the carbon footprint of this product. What if we all started creating our carbon handprints and have carbon handshakes? The other one that really I got excited by was um, in a way about what you just said, Awais, but a different space-related thing, the space diplomacy. Um, I say this because I think there is a there we are at an inflection point where we need to revisit the governance mechanisms that we have about outer space. About a little over a decade ago, CEW had worked with some of the leading diplomats in the country to develop the first uh, uh, report on India and global governance, which had a chapter on outer space governance. But it was about the inherited rules of the road, or rather, rules of the space. I think the way technology has evolved and the way we are envisioning interplanetary human civilization, I think this is something where we shouldn't just be seeking a seat at the table. We should be beginning to shape the rules of the game, and that to me is very interesting. A third one I would say is this notion of I'm just looking for the word here. Yeah, this notion of seasteads, and again, it seems very small. I mean, it's definitely imaginative about um, resilient spaces of habitation which are on water. Some of you might or might not recall a movie by Kevin Costner from more than 30 years ago, I think, called Waterworld. And the movie bombed at the box office. But I think what I see in this whole notion of seasteads is not just about the physical manifestation of that kind of habitation. It's actually, what does it mean? We are inhabiting a planet that is three-quarters water, and yet all our reference points are terrestrial. So once you start thinking about habitations on water, then suddenly governance mechanisms, conversations, rules, boundaries, borders, political and otherwise, begin to change. It just becomes you almost imagine that we've limited three-quarters of our possibilities on the planet with our terrestrial visions. So I think this is why I would say that people should be reading this dictionary, not to get the definitions, but to ignite their imaginations.
Absolutely. I think, that definitely resonates. Lots of people end up asking, why do we need to even focus on space when there's so many problems on Earth? But if you look at weather satellites that end up saving millions of lives a year by predicting when hurricanes might come somewhere, or the other benefits that investment there has brought in, as you said, it opens the mind to at least different ways of thinking. And there might not be one right answer or a wrong answer, but that sort of gets us there. People might not have watched Waterworld, but they probably have watched Avatar. Like, you have the land people and the air people. You had diplomacy start on land, move to air, move to the water, and it'll move to space eventually as well, like you mentioned in space diplomacy. And I think finally on seasteads, I can maybe tell you or not tell you that it might have been slightly inspired by Mumbai's real estate prices on where to go next in terms of living sustainable places. But no, that's it. I think thank you so much, Dr. Ghosh, for coming in and inaugurating the dictionary. I personally can't wait to see how this turns out. Right. Thank you for your insights and support, but also thank you to the endless youth that end up contributing to it. But this is not the end of the dictionary for everyone. We have created space at the end of each copy for our readers to contribute their own words of the future. So hopefully this dictionary will remain a living, breathing document, because as we know, the future is full of endless possibilities, and 47 words are just the beginning. So hopefully we can all keep the momentum going. The only way to predict the future is to shape it. And so if you have ever wanted to time travel without leaving your chair, this is your chance to create words that might hopefully end up leaving a better world. So yeah, here it's an action call to action for every young person that might be listening to this to engage, contribute, and shape tomorrow. Come in with your advice, your recommendations, and we're happy to keep on adding there. So I think finally ending with a Eleanor Roosevelt quote: "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams, and words are the vessels that carry those dreams into reality." So we hope that these words become the vessels that make the better future possible for us all. So with that, I hand over to Anita to lead us into our next segment. And thank you again, Dr. Ghosh, for the session.
Thanks, Awais, and look forward to seeing all the fellows again very soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Gosh and Awais, for kicking us off and for your inspiring leadership in this space. As Awais said, my name is Anita Gyaba, and I am from South Africa. I'm a Next Generation Fellow for Gender Equality, and I am so thrilled to be joining you as we delve in deeper in today's session, which truly highlights how remarkable this year has been. I think this conversation couldn't be more timely if you ask me. With the recent G20 summit in Rio in Brazil setting the stage for bold commitments, and of course, COP29, which has brought forth the voices of young people in global climate diplomacy. Together, these moments have reinforced something crucial: the power of global cooperation to addressing the pressing challenges of our time. And today's session will take us one step further, focusing on young countries. And these are countries where half of the population is under the age of 30. Many of these nations are, of course, developing countries and are home to the fastest growing populations, brimming with potential. And by the year 2100, 3 out of 4 people will call either Asia or Africa their home, which underscores the critical role that young countries will play in shaping the future of global cooperation and our world. But unfortunately, these countries are often disproportionately bearing the weight of global challenges such as climate change, inequality, and unsustainable debt. At the same time, they hold the key to shaping a more equitable and sustainable future, not just for their own countries, but for the world and the next generations to come. And through this conversation today, we hope to connect the dots between global diplomacy and the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the aspirations of young countries. We'll explore how platforms like the G20 and COP can do more to center these nations and young people, driving change within them. Our speakers here today represent a very wide range of expertise and experiences, from leading international climate negotiations and championing inclusive governance to youth leadership. Together, they'll help us reimagine what's possible when young countries and their leaders are at the heart of global decision-making. And I'm, of course, thrilled to introduce our speakers here today. First, we have Leila Hasanova, COP29 Presidency Youth Climate Champion, who's been amplifying the voices of young people in the climate diplomacy space. Leila is here fresh off COP29's big wins, ready to share how young voices are driving global climate action and what is next for the most vulnerable nations. We are also joined by Dr. Muhammad Ibn Chambas, the African Union High Representative for Silencing the Guns. A renowned diplomat and peace builder, he has held key leadership positions in the African Union, the United Nations, and ECOWAS, dedicating his career to fostering peace, development, and international relations. And finally, we have Amal Anoj, a trailblazing young leader who has represented India on the global stage at COP20, at COP, and at the G20 and beyond. And he's also the youngest youth ambassador in the Indian delegation to China and a prominent speaker at the Y20 and G20 summit. Amal embodies the power of youth advocacy, and he'll share strategies on how young leaders can influence global governance and shape a fairer and more inclusive world. So to kick off our discussion, I would like to turn first to Ms. Leila Hasanova. Leila, thank you for being with us today. My question to you is, COP just concluded and youth voices were central to those discussions, right? And as a COP29 presidency youth climate champion, what do you see as the biggest win for young people at COP? And how can these outcomes shape global climate policies and ensure that the most vulnerable nations are prioritized? And also maybe if you can just start us off by understanding what the COP29 presidency youth climate champion means. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Anita, for your question. Hello, everyone. My utmost pleasure to join you here today. And just a quick information, it's the first event that I joined after COP29 ended because we needed some time to just recharge. And when I saw the invitation, I was like, yeah, we should definitely gather and discuss the importance of COP29 and youth at the heart of climate discussion. Well, thank you so much. First of all, I would like to start with introducing the role and then moving on, of course, to the question. Well, the biggest win for youth is the role itself. The institutionalization of the Presidency Youth Climate Champion role was a landmark achievement last year that actually led us to the point where we are right now. And the role ensures that ensures a formalized youth presence in future COPs, providing a consistent platform for young voices in climate governance. And this role is mainly about bridging young people and policymakers. So it's not about representing young people. The Presidency Youth Climate Champion is there to bridge the gap between the young people and policymakers, to make sure that when those policymakers, they write decisions, they make decisions, they include us, young people, and they know better in which way to do so by having the support from Presidency Youth Climate Champion. Another win for this year, a win for me definitely, and for young people, was the adoption of youth-friendly language in the new collective quantified goal discussions, which is the NCQG, and this has created a bridge between technical policies and the grassroots level understanding essential for engaging young people. And by integrating youth perspectives into NCQG and broader climate financing mechanisms, COP29 has demonstrated that policies shaped with inclusivity are better equipped to address the realities of vulnerable nations. Then, of course, there was a focus on capacity building initiatives, particularly for youth in developing countries, which ensures an equitable representation in the implementation of these global goals. What we did on our road to COP29, we gathered 75 young educators from 35 countries from across the globe to Baku to teach them about climate change, about the science behind climate change, because I truly and strongly believe that the key to solving and those critical issues is education, is being equipped with the proper knowledge. Also, the institutionalization of the role sets a precedent for prioritizing adaptation strategies in vulnerable nations, amplifying specifically youth leadership in local climate resilience projects. For now, we also we look forward to, of course, working together with our colleagues from Brazil. But mainly what we did and what is our outcome from this year is the youth-friendly NCQG, is having the youth climate champion role institutionalized, and more instruments on capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leila, for that powerful insight into the youth achievements at COP29. I think it's encouraging to hear how young voices have been prioritized in the climate justice space. So now to turn my attention over to Dr. Chambers. Dr. Chambers, with Africa's significant representation as a young continent, how can platforms like the G20 strengthen partnerships with the African Union to address the interlinked challenges like debt justice, peace building, and sustainable development? And what opportunities do you see for advancing these priorities under South Africa's G20 leadership next year? Over to you.
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me.
All clear.
Yes, very good. Let me say that I am very pleased to have been invited to participate in today's discussion. I'm always keen to hear the voices of youth, particularly from an African perspective, where the youth constitute the majority of our population. Youth combined with females, clearly an overwhelming majority, and there are still cultural barriers to allowing youth to play their full role and to bring their full potential to bear in dealing with challenges that we face. But on that, let me just observe that many of African icons, leaders that we uphold today of a certain generation who fought for our independence, I think it's from time to time, we should be reminded that the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Mandelas, the Nyereres were all very youthful persons when they took up the challenge of their time, which was to fight for independence for the continent. So this is a reason we should be listening and giving more voices to young people on our continent and indeed across young countries, which, by the way, is a new concept I'm learning today, thanks to my interaction with this very youthful forum and persons that we are dealing with today. Thank you for that. Coming back to the topic, let me just say that we are very pleased that South Africa will be chairing COP next, because South Africa is one of the engine rooms of our continent. It's one of the pillar countries. And so we have every assurance that with South Africa in the leadership there, our African agenda issues will be taken up. Now, what are some of those agenda items? I come under a broad rubric of silencing the guns. And we understand that to mean that this is an initiative that will tackle or seek to tackle root causes and issues that often are the source of conflict on our continent. Of course, they pertain to governance issues, they pertain to poverty and underdevelopment, persistent inequalities justice, etc., etc. But relating to today's discussion and putting in the context of G20, let me just highlight one or two issues that I think will be very helpful. First of all, I'd like to start with natural resources. Africa is known to abound in natural resources. And yet, what we are seeing today is a situation where not sufficient transformation is taking place of African raw materials. The result is that unemployment persists, particularly of youth unemployment. And this is a source of conflict. It's a source of instability. It's a source of many riots and demonstrations we are seeing, including in some of our large countries, such as recently in Kenya and in Nigeria. So we need to take this up seriously, and we need to have a discussion with our northern partners of the North, to understand that the old structure of international economic system, where Africa and some of our southern countries were relegated to producers of raw materials to be exported to the North, transformed, and then the final products resold to Africa, that is not a sustainable system. And we have to have beneficiation and value added in Africa. So when this is expressed, we would hope that it will be done in a manner that our partners will begin to understand that it's not a question of putting it negatively as raw material nationalism. It is just adjusting to ensure that jobs are created for our youth at home, so they do not take the risk, which we often see, of trying to cross the Sahara, the Mediterranean, and other seas in order to go to the North, Europe and North America and other countries in search of jobs and greener pastures. So this is an important issue going forward that we need to discuss in a manner that there will be understanding on all sides that yes, while Africa raw materials should be available, will be available more and more, we will need to be harnessing these resources at home for development. The other issue that I think should be discussed and that we expect South African leadership on is financial reforms. Once again, Africa is facing a financial debt crisis. This is 20 years after the famous HIPIC program, under which African debts, after Africa got debt relief, and many debts were canceled, restructured in any case. And then all of a sudden, we are back to a situation where many countries are at this point simply unable to pay their debts. It means fundamentally that the international financial system has remained anachronistic and not responsive to African and Southern countries' reality. We are often said to be the areas where the highest returns on investment is obtained. So if that is the case, how is it that loans and other financial instruments granted to Africa and other southern countries end up paying what is frankly usurious interest rates? You know, we know prevailing interest rates in northern countries, 2%, 3%, 4%, And yet, if you come to, let me just say Africa for sure, you will find countries borrowing at 12, 15%, sometimes even more. This is an issue that needs to be taken up, certainly, and addressed in a manner that we prevent this situation of just going from one debt crisis into another and forcing African countries to be constantly asking for debt relief. The interest rates should be reasonable, should be commercial rates, viable rates, so that when the loans are taken, they can be repaid. Another aspect which I should touch on here is, of course, the issue of transparency in these transactions. It is emerging more and more that often these transactions are opaque. There are some star cases that are emerging. I can cite Mozambique. Recently, there were some cases, I believe, also in Kenya. And there are many around our continent where these transactions have evidence of collusion in which the monies borrowed do not really come back to the continent. And if they do, they are not used for the purposes. They are, let me just say, they are tainted by bribery and corruption. And when you talk of corruption, there is the corruptor and the corruptee. So there tends to be a situation where it's always blamed on the Africans as being the corrupt, but those who are advancing the money are usually colluding. They are the corruptors. And I think this issue that should be tackled. I will not touch the climate issue. The previous speaker has done justice to it in talking about climate justice. We only know that we are not polluting as much, and there should be some justice in giving us the resources that have been promised to ensure that we're able to mitigate and to adjust to the deleterious impact of climate change. A final issue which I would like to raise here is what is now UN Security Council Resolution 2719, which was negotiated with Africa at the UN Security Council, and which will allow for a new mode of financing peacekeeping in Africa and I believe other parts of the world. The old standard model has failed. That's why you are seeing in Africa withdrawal of one peacekeeping operation after another. And as Secretary General has said, 21st century challenges require 21st century solutions. And it is out of this. The U.S. Security Council Resolution 2719 was negotiated to ensure that funding from UN budget can be from assessed contributions from UN and member states can be utilized for UN peacekeeping in Africa. We have two cases now ready to be tested. There's Somalia, which is an ongoing crisis where terrorists caused the collapse of the Somali state as we knew it. A lot of effort has been made by the international community to bring back Somalia, and Somalia is on the move. As a matter of fact, in January, Somalia will be a member of the Security Council. That is tremendous progress. So therefore, 2719 can be tested there. Secondly, we have Sudan, which incidentally, I have responsibility along with my two other panel members to see what we can do to mediate in that crisis. That crisis, which is the worst humanitarian situation in the world. 2.5 million Sudanese are refugees in other countries already after 1 year, almost 8-9 months of fighting. 2.5 million people. That is huge. And they're placing a burden on neighboring countries of Sudan. Secondly, we have internally displaced population right now approaching 12 to 13 million Sudanese. Many of them having moved twice, thrice, and facing the brunt of the war, which is still raging. So here again, there's an opportunity to utilize 2719, work to have a ceasefire, work to have a consensual approach among the fighting forces to bring relief to the suffering Sudanese population, incidentally, the bulk of whom are young people and women. So these are some of the issues that I would like to put forth. And of course, maybe we can elaborate in discussion so that I don't overrun my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I think that was incredibly insightful and profound. And I was actually really interested in what you were saying around, African industrialization. Perhaps in the Q&A segment, if you could maybe try to answer that question on how we can balance the climate question and the industrialization aspirations for Africa. So yeah, and also thank you for emphasizing the importance of youth engagement in this space. Thank you so much. Now, Amal, our other panelist, my question is now to you. As a young person who has represented India globally and has engaged deeply in youth advocacy, what strategies can young leaders adopt to ensure that their voices are influential in the global governance platforms like the G20? And how can youth leadership drive transformative change, particularly in realizing a more inclusive and equitable future for young countries? Over to you, Amal.
Okay. I hope I am audible, right?
Yes, you are. Perfect.
Yeah, good evening, the distinguished panelists, and esteemed audience, and the young leaders from across the globe. So it is an honor to be here today as a youth ambassador representing India, a nation that proudly embodies the spirit of young countries and the aspiration of the global South. So this platform reminds us of the G20's immense potential to shape an inclusive and an equitable world, a vision India and Brazil have championed in their recent presidencies. So together, we stand at the crossroads of an extraordinary challenges and opportunities. And it is in these conversations we chart the pathway towards more equitable and a sustainable future for all. Coming to my question, the youth leaders, I would like to say that the youth leaders is not just about participation, so it is about transformation. So in my journey as a youth ambassador, so I have realized that in our influence on the platform like G20 begins with 3 critical strategies. The young leaders must form alliances that transcends the boundaries, uniting the common priorities such as climate action, health equity, and inclusive economic development. For instance, the youth forums under the G20, I think most of you are aware of the Y20 summits. So it can amplify our shared agenda and ensure the policymaker cannot ignore our unified voice. And also, in this connected world, I think that digital tools empower us to engage millions and advocate for systemic change. From mobilizing the grassroots, influencing the global narrative, these platforms bring a gap of decision-making and encourage more youth participation or youth citizens. And I think the meaningful participation required a structural representation. Like when there was a G20 presidency of India in 2023, we was having a youth consultation, Y20 consultation program, and also the Brazil's youth-centered diplomacy. It had proven that integrating youth perspective can lead to more inclusive policies. We can see the outcomes, G20 outcomes. If you're going through that, it's clear from that. And as the South Africa is preparing to assume the G20 presidency, I urge them to institutionalize youth engagement, ensuring our contribution are not just heard, but acted upon. The transformative change, I think it stemmed from the bold leadership. And we know what happened with the recent COP summit. I think there is an expert already speaking on that. There was a great participation from the youth, but in overall, the developing nation was not, I would say, not bit happy with the outcomes. So I think the young leaders must advocate for the innovative solution like debt for climate or the universal health fund. so which directly address the challenges of young countries. By pushing the systemic reforms, I think we become the architect of the future we wish to inherit. And coming to India's achievements, I would say also the India's and Brazil's achievements during the G20 presidencies show us what is possible with nations coming together with a shared vision. I think most of you are aware of, most of you must be aware of the India's quote, like India's focus was on Vasudeva Kudumbakam. I think most of you have heard about that. It means like one earth, one family, and one future. And the Brazil emphasized on a social inclusion that have laid a groundwork for South Africa's champion. The need of the young countries with getting together both aspirational and achievable. And I know here are many young leaders. So as young leaders here, our great strength lies in our collective power to inspire the change. As a young leaders, I think we must foster global partnership, collaborate with the peers across the borders, excel in ideas and solutions. And also we should engage in policy making, advocate for youth representation, decision-making forums, and shape the policies that prioritize long-term goals over these short-term gains. And apart from this all, we should lead by an example, living the values of sustainability and inclusivity in our personal and professional life. So for South Africa's presidency, the vision of an equitable and inclusive G20 must be grounded in policies that uplift the youth of today while securing the opportunities of youth of tomorrow. This requires the courage to address a systemic inequality and foresight to invest in transformative solutions led to the young people. Youth leaders to see themselves as stakeholders and innovators are driving the systemic change, living the legacy of inclusivity and equality. The youth leadership is not just about pushing the boundaries, but about redefining them. For climate action to healthcare equity, we must take a bold, coordinated actions that disrupted the status quo and create the opportunity for young countries to thrive. So I would like to conclude by saying, as the Mahatma Gandhi once said, the future depends on what you do today. So let us work together and intergenerational allies to create a world where the peace, health, and prosperity is not just a privilege, but the right for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amal. That was incredibly precise and straight to the point. I do have a question for you again. Perhaps you could address it later in the Q&A segment when you're answering some of the questions in the Q&A segment. As a young person, I'm South African, by the way. As a young person, ordinary South African youth, how do I engage with the G20? And also, what is the Y20? And how does it relate to the G20? Perhaps if you could maybe explain that and explain how ordinary Indian youth engage with the Y20 process and the G20 process when India had its presidency. Yeah, but thank you so much for those inspiring insights on youth leadership and advocacy. But before I jump into the final question to all of our panelists, I wanted to remind all of our audience to engage with us as we're coming to the Q&A segment shortly. So please keep your Q&A questions coming in, and we'll be getting to them just after this quick fire round. So I do have a last question I would like to pose to the entire panel. And the question is, looking ahead to key moments next year, what message of hope or urgency would you like to leave with this audience as we work towards a future that prioritizes both people and the planet? Perhaps we could start with you, Leila.
Thank you so much, Anita. Well, a message of hope might be that our collective power lies in the intersection of both youth energy and intergenerational collaboration. And in my role as COP29 Presidency Youth Climate Champion, I have to mention that COP29 showed us that when youth are heard, transformative policies emerge and reshaping the narrative for vulnerable nations. This is a message of hope and a message of urgency. Well, while the road ahead is hopeful, it definitely demands action from all of us. The outcomes of COP29 need swift and sustained implementation. The G20 has the unique power to catalyze this change, bridging economic priorities with climate commitments and ensuring that no nation is left behind.
Thank you so much, Leila. Dr. Chamas?
Yes, you had posed the question of African industrialization. It is now a must if we have to meet the aspirations of Africa's teeming youth. And, you know, one example that is very stark and which is often cited by Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, who control about 65% of cocoa production, raw cocoa production. They only benefit from 5 to 6%, less than 10% of the global value chain of the cocoa tree, the cocoa industry, the cocoa pod, all the way to the chocolates, etc. That is unacceptable. When you talk of inequality and disequilibrium, that is it. Is it any wonder that youth from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire will be heading off to try and see greener pastures in Europe? So it's in our mutual interest, northern countries and southern countries. And the G20 is a platform where issues such as this should be addressed so that we all design a strategic approach, a win-win approach. The previous system, which Musa Faki, chairperson of AU, calls one that is broken, one that is not sustainable, and I think we are all agreed on that. One is marked by extreme inequalities, need to be set aside. Let us find a win-win situation where northern countries, yes, they can still have access to strategic raw materials and minerals on the continent, but we must be processing and adding value to get a better share, an equitable share of global market share of any of these industries. I've just given one example. It applies across board. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And then maybe Amal, if we could have you respond to that. Thank you.
So yeah, I think the main purpose, like I am going to talk about the G20 things. So especially as you all know, the G20 group is such a powerful group. If you're taking after the United Nations, I would say it is influencing a lot with, especially in the youth-centric policies. So I think especially we should focus on this as we all the speakers already discussed. So I think I don't have anything more to contribute, because the general perspective in the right now at this time, we should more focus on sustainability and especially achieving the climate goals, because we know what it's going to happen if we are not acting at this moment. So I think there should be a structural change. I mean, structural participation of the youth. The voice of the youth should be heard more, because we are having especially in a general perspective, I'm saying the youth among the whole world are having great ideas, but they are not getting such a great platform. So they're not getting great opportunities to, express that. So I think the coming presidencies must also especially coming G20 presidency or the COP Summit or any of the summits should focus on more on youth-centric policies. And also in our G20s, India's presidencies, so we had conducted many of, as I said, the Y20 consultation programs across the country, like from the north to south and east to west. Most of the universities and the engagement was there. So we took the output from them. So I think the South Africa also should conduct more. I think more online or connecting the whole globe together and bringing all the perspective. I think there should be a youth-centric approach towards the yeah.
Thank you so much, Amal. Thank you to all our speakers for their very incredible insights. I think two key takeaways for me today that stand out is first the transformative potential of global platforms like the G20 and the COP to amplify youth voices and addressing pressing challenges like climate justice and inequality. And of course, secondly, the unique opportunity that young countries could lead to shaping sustainable and more inclusive futures, especially as the baton is being passed off to South Africa, my home country, for their presidency next year. So now I think we can open the floor for our Q&A session. I think we have quite a couple of questions coming in. So the first question is to all of our panelists, and this is from Jacob from Wales, and they have asked, do you need to lower the voting age in countries to enable young people to have access, to have a direct influence on decisions that affect them? Would the panel support this? So maybe we can start with you, Leila.
Yeah, sure. Well, definitely, I think yes, because the minimum age is should be, I mean, the minimum age, voting age here in Azerbaijan is 18, and we are quite happy with that, because at that time, at that age, you become more, how to say, you understand more of what's happening around, and you're about to make clear decisions. But well, yes, of course, I think we need to know and have some control over it.
Thank you so much, Leila. Doctor?
Yes, lowering this threshold, not only for voting, but also for holding office, is an important gesture. And I'm using the word deliberately, because beyond that, there has to be conscious efforts, more or less youth affirmative action also. I'm one who believes in gender affirmative action, and I also believe in youth affirmative action to get more and more youth on board. Nigeria is a good example where there was a particular legislation which was called Not Too Young to Lead, under which, through youth advocacy, the threshold age for being member of National Assembly, even being president of the country, was lowered. And I think that is symbolically good. But beyond that, political parties and other institutions should have a deliberate policy also of making sure that they do incorporate and bring on board young people to give them the opportunity to serve, to bring all their energy and their enthusiasm and their modern technologies and approaches to bear on governance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for that. Amal?
Yeah. I think, yeah, if you're taking the case of India also, India is a country where there is a universal adult franchise. I mean, the 18 years, our voting age is, as Azerbaijan representative told, here is also the 18 years voting age is there. And I think there, it like brought more youth participation in the governance. I think more youth are involved in, not at all in the politics I'm saying, just not in the political parties, and overall in the administration of the government. Also, I would say in India, the civil service, I mean, diplomats are entering in the 21st, in their 21st years old. So I think it's a good thing. But if you're taking the overall approach, if you're taking the whole world, there should be more like youth leaders coming up. I mean, youth participation, especially in the governance and their for forming their public policies and foreign policies. So I think there is a lag between. I mean, because more of the leaders are. I mean, it's good to have elder leaders there, but there should be more participation of the youth in that instance. I think for India, in the case of India, I think India is doing a great in this perspective. The participation of youth, as we all know about the India's 2047 agenda, it's like more youth centric, and like we are involving more youth participation in that. So I think, yeah, that's what it comes down.
Thank you so much, Amal, for that. And then the next question is to Leila. And this is from Edwin from Liberia. And the question is, how can climate activists, including those from younger countries like Liberia, get more access or involved in global climate justice causes? I think perhaps, Leila, this is an opportunity to maybe speak a bit more about your personal journey as well in the climate advocacy space.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Well, definitely. The way to be involved is learning more and getting yourself involved and challenge your own self. that's how I got into space. And to be really frank and open with you, before before Azerbaijan got selected as a host country of COP29, we were not, this region, the Central Asia and Eastern Europe region, was not into the climate discussions. And young people were underrepresented from this region in the climate discussions. So actually, Conference of the Parties coming to this region made us realize more about what is the essence of this challenge, how can we tackle it in our small groups, communities, in large communities as well. So for your specific question, I might tell you that my journey started very long ago, from 5-6 years ago. I started voluntarily working for Youth Network, and after 3 years of voluntarily work, our Youth Network, which is the non-aligned movement youth organization now, turned into official organization, and now it unites 121 member states, youth from those member states. And this was a volunteer work. So we did it because we thought that it's important for us young people to unite, because otherwise the change is not possible. Otherwise, if we do not support each other, if we do not teach each other and make sure that we learn from each other, it's not possible to do something that is outstanding. So my advice to you is that work hard to make sure that your voice is heard, and learn new things, challenge yourself, because learning it's never late to learn.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Leila, for that. And then the next question is to Dr. Chambas. And this question is from Stanislas and David. So the question is, do you have ideas and suggestions on how young people from across Africa can be involved in the conversations in the lead up to the G20 in South Africa, including the Africa diaspora from all across the world? Over to you, Doctor.
Yes, in fact, to replicate what we are doing today, that's a good start. And fortunately, technology helps us to do that. So I would like to see many more of the African think tanks and other, prominent research institutes leading these kinds of conversations. We have Imani Africa in Addis, we have Accord in Durban, we have ISS in Pretoria, and so many African think tanks and research institutes which have the capacity and the network to lead this kind of conversation, and also do it to focus, yes, on the African issues, but as we are seeing today, in solidarity with global South countries such as India and the non-aligned countries as a whole. We must always maintain the solidarity and also focus on issues affecting small island states and inland countries, which have their own peculiarities and their own challenges. And it is incumbent that we always stand together and fight together on these issues. So yes, technology now has collapsed distances, and in real time, as we are doing now, we can have these very useful conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And then our next question is to Amal. And this is from Deng, Ajahn, Musa, and Fopoto. And the question is, how can global platforms engage young people in Africa through intergenerational cooperation, from COP30 to this digital space that is the engine room? And how can these platforms advance political and economic stability for the continent? Over to you, Amal. It's a tough question.
Yeah, but I think more like the effort from I don't know what the South Africa's presidency is already set the agenda for the youth. I think I'm not the one to answer on South Africa this year's agendas, but in the general perspective, I think, more of the participation is necessary, I would say. But because as I mentioned before also, the voice are not, the voice are not heard at all properly. So I think, also in the policy making also, if there is more youth centric, youth participation is there, the opinion of the youth are prioritized in more predominant way. I think it would in a bit way can solve this type of issues. And I hopefully looking that South Africa's presidency will be considering all these stuff. If we are taking if you took India's or the last Brazil's agendas, we could see more giving importance to the sports and health and other stuffs. So I think in the economic perspective also, the South Africa's this year presidency will also, put the agenda accordingly. And apart from all, the problem I see right now is that the youth voice are, we are just bounded by the borders in many of the cases. Like if you're taking the youth forums, like these type of forums are giving the opportunity to raise the voice, but still there are few restrictions from the countryside. So I think it should be solved. I would say youth should take the initiative for that. That's my.
Yeah, thanks, Amal. I think maybe if I could just add to that question as well. I think I asked the question earlier on. As a young person, South African, and just an average African youth, how do I engage with the Y20? How do I engage with the G20? What was your experience? What was your personal journey? What does that look like, and how do I find those opportunities to be involved in the process and to influence the discussions and the conversations in those platforms? I think it's just worth emphasizing if you can.
Okay, so from my experience, from the India's at the time of India's presidency, as I said, we was hosting plenty number of events in plenty number of universities and schools. I would say in the whole, most of the district, most of the state of India was having either one or two Y20 consultation programs. So that was an approach to include more youth voice in that, more youth participation. And I was there in one of the many of the events, many of the consultation event as a speaker at the point of time. So I could get many opinion from their side. Also, I saw a question posted in the chat that how to participate in this type of Y20 thing. It depends on the countries. Particularly if in India, the Ministry of Youth Affairs is nominating the youth delegation for these presidencies. So I think in it depends on the country's policy also. So for the South, I would suggest to give an outcome for the South Africa. I would try to engage more youth participation in your country across from the east to west and north south of your country, and also this type of encourage more online webinars on that perspective. So also bringing the South Africa's, there are some issues that the developing nations are facing, especially including India. There are many common issues. As the leaders of Global South, we should more emphasize on that type of issues. And I think these type of conservation programs will give a idea, what the youth needs. So I think to conduct more consultation programs would be a great thing to do in these coming presidency.
Yeah, that's clear. Thank you so much, Amal, for that. And then our last two questions, see, we are running out of time. There's so many questions coming in. But yes, I'll pose this last two questions to the entire panel. So the question is from Ruchira from India. And the question is, how can we get political leaders to care about future generations when they're focused on solving today's pressing problems? There's plenty of evidence about the cost of inaction on issues like air pollution, agriculture, and fossil fuels, but political and economic systems seem to be stuck. What do you think needs to change to break this cycle? And we can start off with Leila.
Thank you so much. Amazing question, because just a month ago we had all the world leaders, I mean, some of them, gathering here in Baku, and it was a tough question for us and a tough task for us to make sure that they care about us young people. Because it's hard, they have so many challenges now on the table, and I sometimes go back to my thoughts and understand that, okay, these people have things to solve, but here we are, young people, the next generation, the future generation that will inherit the world, and we need some action today from them. And inaction from them today will lead to a disastrous world that we will inherit. What I thought is that, and what we had seen from consultations with young people from
I think we are losing you, Leila.
is that we have the policy make to challenge. For example, youth climate champion role is one of the key. Having Secretary General on youth affairs is also key, because
Leila,
those
maybe we
focal
can
points
circle back to you because
that
we are
can some ripple and make sure know what about how. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. So maybe we can circle back to you, if that's okay with you. Okay, Amal, maybe you could start us off.
Okay, can you just shoot the question again? So I was just getting out.
Sure. The question is, how can we get political leaders to care about future generations when they're focused on solving today's present problems? There's plenty of evidence about the cost of inaction on issues like air pollution, agriculture, and fossil fuels, but political and economic systems seem stuck. What do you think needs to change to break this cycle?
Okay, I think the question is too relevant also. If you're seeing the last COP's outcomes, it was there, it was a concern of the world also right now, because we couldn't get an expected outcomes for the developing nations. There was a great, and I noticed one thing, there was a great youth participation in the COP summit. There was many of the people was really raising the voice for that. But still, your question, I mean, it's still relevant that the leaders are not that much involving into this perspective of sustainability right now, because we couldn't see a proper outcomes. So your question, for addressing this question, I think we should engage them. I mean, we should engage and we should make we should raise the voice with many of the platform, and we should. I think the problem is that we are not getting united properly. I mean, the voice of the world is not getting united properly. The youth, there is some restriction. I mean, we are still restricted with the. There might be, because the world leaders must be concerned of the foreign policies and their foreign diplomatic agendas. But as a youth, I mean, as the young voice, we should raise the voice for the sustainable future. I think it's our responsibility to involve more into this type of, I would say, this type of forums also, and also making ourselves aware. Because the problem is that if you are talking here, we are talking in many forums regarding this and that. But personally, I think many of us are not really bringing this type of, I mean, bringing the practice of sustainability and bringing this change in our daily life. So first, I think we should bring the change in our daily routines and in our daily habits. So that could bring a great change. Also, then I think there will be definitely a change in this type of. Hopefully there will be a change. That's only my comment on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Amal, for that. Reminds me of what Awas and Dr. Bosch was speaking about earlier on, about the carbon handshake and the carbon handprint. Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And over to you, Dr. Chalmers. I would like to hear your thoughts.
Well, youth activism, don't underestimate how you can influence and set agendas in your respective countries and with regional and continental bodies through the work that young people will do. Of course, the challenge is for all of society, but issues that concern youth, youth should get very active and it starts even when you're in school. Get active with your student representative councils, with your national student associations. Be part of national political parties. That's how you influence decisions, because youth have a lot of energy and a lot of drive. And these days, a lot of knowledge that they can bring to bear to shape agendas from when you're talking of decision making, it means the political parties and governments. That's how it will happen. So don't underestimate the mobilizing capacity and organizational impact that youth who are organized that they can bring to bear in changing the focus from just existential challenges, and there are many. I'm not underestimating it. Most governments have to solve real problems, immediate pressing problems, but they cannot just be narrow-minded. They have to be also projecting into the future and anticipate future challenges and prepare and be strategic in their perspective. And young people can help in that direction, especially if they want issues that will be youth sensitive to be taken on board. Just as is the case with gender sensitive issues that need more and more to be taken on board by our government. It's not easy, but as Nelson Mandela Madiba always said, it always seems impossible until it is done. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Chambers. And Leila, I see we have you back. If your internet's stable enough, if you could circle back to you on your response to that question.
Yes, thank you so much, Anita. I apologize. The connection was just, it just gone off. So taking back the question and leaders and how we can influence them. Well, thanks to reply from Dr. Chambers, the thing is that young people, we really can make a change, and we should not underestimate the power that we have. Because what I have seen from those 2 weeks of COP was that we can make a change by what I mentioned earlier, by challenging those policymakers, because us coming together and standing for our rights, for the greener future, makes them realize that, okay, these young people out there, they are really enthusiastic about the future. They can really make a change. So why not shouldn't we bring them into the discussion and make sure that they are at the heart of climate discussions and we are changing the world for the better?
Thank you so much, Leila, for that. And thank you to our phenomenal speakers for their very powerful insights today, and to you all for being a part of this critical conversation. And as we wrap up this final pit stop of 2024, let's take a moment to reflect on the journey that we've shared. So from launching the India in Future Tense dictionary to amplifying youth voices at the Summit of the Future this year, this has demonstrated the power of young change makers in young countries to drive bold and transformative action. Today's discussion has reinforced why young countries and their dynamic population are crucial to shaping the future of global cooperation. They need to be at the heart of global decision making. And the work that we've started here ensures that their voices are heard and that their potentials are realized. Let's not see this as an end of the discussion, but rather the beginning of a movement. Each of us have a role to play in turning these ideas into action and ensuring that no voice is left unheard. And now, to close off this session, I want to leave you with a story of hope and innovation that embodies everything this session has been about. Rashul, a 16-year-old climate activist from Baku in Azerbaijan, lives near the Caspian Sea, in one of the hottest areas in the city. Throughout his life, he has witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of climate change, from receding waters and the toll on biodiversity in his community. Instead of standing by, Rashul took action. And this animation drives his dreams and hopes for the future in partnership with UNICEF and the COP Youth Climate Champion team. It is narrated in his own voice and was completed at the Global Leaders Gathering in Baku for COP29. So if we can start the animation.
Salam, I'm Rasul, I'm 16, living just outside Baku, Azerbaijan, near the shores of the Caspian Sea. I love biking to escape the city noise. One day, I biked along the shore and saw a fish stranded, helpless on the sand. Another time, I came across a seal, struggling to breathe. It was heart-wrenching. I didn't understand what was happening, so I dug deeper and found out something shocking. The Caspian Sea is shrinking fast. Scientists predict it could drop by as much as 30 meters by 2100. All due to rising temperatures and excessive water use. It's not just the Caspian. By 2040, United Nations says that 1 in 4 children could be living in areas of extreme water scarcity. That's a scary thought. I wanted to help, but this problem felt way too big. Then I noticed something interesting. Each day our rare conditions create water. Could we capture and use it somehow? I've always loved working with my friends on projects, so we put our heads together. And that's how Drop by Drop was born. It's simple. We collect and reuse this otherwise wasted water. I dream of making a living in sustainability, and when I'm older, and inspiring others to think about how what we do now shapes tomorrow. But sometimes I worry, what if we don't act in time? What if by the time I'm 30, Baku is too hot and too dry to live in? Moving would be hard on everyone, especially my brother, who has autism and finds it difficult to adapt to changes. The United Nations predicts there could be 1.2 billion climate refugees by 2015. Could we become just another number in the statistics? And now it's not just the climate that worries me. Future generations could be facing so many challenges at once. What if pandemics keep returning? What if we can't undo the damage to the planet? But imagine if we get it right. At 30, I'm a climate scientist. I've studied in Germany and Japan. Now I'm back in Azerbaijan, working on larger sustainability projects. Countries are finally working together to tackle climate change. And back home, Drop by Drop has grown into a national movement, saving thousands of liters of water every single day, and inspiring people to rethink how they use resources. My brother is thriving, getting all the support he needs to live as independently as possible. Now I'm 16, and Baku is flourishing, powered by green energy, with community gardens and urban farms everywhere. What once was a dream is now a reality. In 2100, it's amazing to see my grandchildren chasing their dreams without worrying about the planet. Technology is helping us to live better lives while protecting the earth. Leaders, the choices you make today are shaping the future for my generation and beyond. Please act now, for us, those who follow. We need bold moves, like in the United Nations Pact for the Future transition away from fossil fuels. Keep global temperatures rise below 1.5 Celsius and push for renewable energy. Ensure universal healthcare, education, justice for all. And most importantly, work with young people like us. A better world is possible, but only if we start now. Act now for our common future.
That was great. That was great. Thank you all for joining us today and being a part of this incredible journey throughout 2024. Rashul's story reminds us of the boundless potential we have when young voices lead the change for a better future. As we look ahead to 2025, let's continue to build on this momentum and shaping bold ideas into transformative actions through platforms like the G20, COP30, the Financing for Development Forum, and the World Social Summit. So do stay tuned to see what happens next. Watch the space, stay engaged, and let's continue creating a future that works for everyone, for every generation, current and future. Thank you so much, everyone from the Our Future Agenda team. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.